Please welcome Mihai Corlan.
Thank you so much for choosing my session. I know there are lots of other interesting sessions, so I'm truly honored for having you in my session. So I'm going to give you a round of applause. Thank you. My name is Mihai Corlan. I work as a web evangelist for Adobe, and you can get in touch with me on my Twitter via mcorlan or at my blog at corlan.org. And I'm actually from Transylvania, which is kind of interesting, I don't know, starter for a chat in US. Oh, you are from Transylvania? Does it really exist? Yeah, it exists. We have castles, no vampires. We have garlic, but yeah. What about you? I'm curious, is there any student here? Okay, couple of you. Any graphic designers? Okay, what about web designers? Okay, and web or front-end developers? Most of you, awesome. Art directors? Managers? Huh? Not really. Awesome. Now, I'm going to ask you one more question. Who knows what Adobe Creative Cloud is? Couple of you, awesome. So, my session is all about workflows and tools for the modern web. Obviously, I'm working for Adobe, so I'm going to focus on the tools and services and workflows we are creating. But some of these tools are actually available for free, so I think it's something fair. Why do you need workflows, better tools today for the web? I think it's a good question to ask. And I think you can actually draw a parallel between the car industry evolution and the web development and web in general evolution. So, if you think about, in the beginning, this is the Ford T, right? The famous Ford T. There were few cars, and few people knew how to actually drive them, right? And the same way, the web in early 90s was something very new, and very few people knew how to build anything but a simple static web page, right? CGI back then was the first technology that allowed us to create dynamic websites, but it was like rocket scientists. Now, moving on, starting with the 70s, cars were everywhere, right? And actually, I'm pretty sure that many people, mostly men, have a new hobby. During the weekends, they were tinkering, working, cleaning their cars. I know my father did this, so I still remember my Sunday afternoons doing stuff to our car. And basically the same way the web in the late 90s and early 2000s was suddenly available to many more people. So what happened? I think it happened two things. At the same time, the browser were better and better. Also, new languages appeared, think about PHP, Cold Fusion, and so forth. And also, the tooling was better. In the beginning, people were using a text editor, right? Late 90s, there were already HTML text editors and the early IDEs available. And as I said, PHP, it was so much easier to create a dynamic website with PHP as opposed to writing C with CGI and so forth. Moving towards today, the cars are very complex, right? And I know my wife, for example, wouldn't open the hood, and I'm doing this for her. And it is basically the same feeling many people have today when they have to either learn web designing, web development, or they have maybe to create a complex project and go out of their comfort zone. And what happened? I guess in the past 15 years, the web has grown into something very complex. And today, if you want to say about yourself, yeah, I'm a ninja web designer or a web developer, it means that you have to master or to learn and master so many different things. CSS3, HTML5, JavaScript engines and frameworks, a countless number of different tools and workflows, plus the differences between the desktop browsers and the mobile browsers. So it's tough. And I guess this is the first reason why we need better tools and better workflows in general. We need these things to cope with the complexity. And I don't think the complexity will go anyway, right? It will increase and increase and increase. But there is a second reason. I think there has never been a better or a bigger demand for websites than what we experience today, right? Big companies, top 100 companies, want sites that actually work across devices. But small companies want also websites that work across devices, like flower shops, coffee shops, right? They all need like a website. Well, coffee shops in Amsterdam, I'm not sure. I mean, they have the happy mushrooms and so they don't need, okay, here in Amsterdam. But in other places, they need. So my session will focus on some of these tools, and some of these tools actually if you use them together, they fall nicely like into a nice workflow that I think that can help you to be more efficient and to build better websites. And what is cool about the tools I'm going to show you is that I think they are useful regardless of your technology expertise level. Like, you might be just a graphic designer and you will find something useful. You might be like a very good web designer or front-end developer, and I still think you are going to find something useful. So, let's start with a tool for graphic designers. There are a couple of you here, right? Can you raise your hand again? Okay, that's a good mix. So, anyone heard of Adobe Muse? Okay, so what is Adobe Muse? Well, if you're like a graphic designer, and maybe you didn't have the time to learn CSS and HTML and JavaScript, but you still get requests from your clients. The very same clients you've built for them, for example, the brand identity, the menu for a restaurant, a business card, the logo, and so forth. And you get inquiries like, okay, can you please build me a website? I only need 3 pages. It's simple. Build it over the night. I need it tomorrow. What do? You can, of course, start learning CSS and HTML and web design in general and web development. Or maybe you can use this tool, Adobe Muse. So Adobe Muse enables basically graphic designers to build modern websites for desktop and mobile devices without coding. This is the tag phrase, okay? So how does it work? Without coding, right? It's a code generator. Well, it's actually pretty cool. This is Muse. And think about what the graphic designers already know, right? And they choose to create a tool that has a user interface and the metaphors for creating stuff that are closely related to what you have in InDesign or Illustrator. So what you are seeing here, it's like what you are seeing here, it's basically the plan mode. So you got an inquiry like, okay, a guy who has like the only coffee shop in Amsterdam that doesn't sell happy mushrooms, he really needs like all the advertising he can get, right? And he asks you like, oh, okay, I need a simple website with 3 pages. So this is where we are going to start. And here you have something that is called masters, and it actually allows you to create templates for your pages. So think about the elements you don't change from page to page, like the menus, the logo of the website, the foot, right, of the website. This is where you are going to design them. So if I click on the master layout, I can actually edit the master layout. I can change the logo, for example, and place another PNG or JPEG. I can replace this guy, which is a PNG right now, but maybe I want to bring in an SVG file. I can create the menu over here. So let me zoom out a little bit. And without coding. So what does it mean? If I click on the widgets library, I have a bunch of options over here. So one of them, it's the menu. So when I drag the menu over here, the tool will automatically generate a menu for me based on the pages I define over here. So right now I have the home page, and the About page and the Contact page. If I need a new page, I'm going to click on this guy, and the menu will be updated. I don't know, FITC, for example. So if I go here, now I have the FITC. And there are many more widgets, like you can have widgets for creating carousels, like hero images that you can browse through them. You can have widgets to gather like user feedback, okay, like a contact form, a complex or a simple one. We have also widgets for accordions, or maybe for social media, like maybe you need like a like button, like a Facebook like button, or a follow Twitter button, and so forth. And when you are ready to actually publish the project, we offer also a hosting solution based on the Business Catalyst service we have, or you can actually get the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript generated by this tool and host it yourself wherever you want, okay? So, how this page looks actually in a browser. So this is my coffee shop. I put together this project like in about 2 hours. And I have the home, and I have over here like a hero image animated, right, like a carousel. And then some text, and then it's the footer. And if I go to the contact page, you can see a Google map. So there is a widget also that allows you to place the location of that business, right, in your page. And if I go on the About page, you are going to see another cool feature that is available in Muse, that it's basically a cool way to create scroll motion effects, right? So you bring in and out of your page elements, pictures, text, whatever, based on the scroll of the page, scroll position, right? It's scroll motion. And it seems to be something that is quite popular these days. So if I starting to scroll, I get to see this. Okay? And this is a simple example of scroll motion. I have here one that it's much more complicated. Let me zoom. Okay? Is it cool? And again, the power of this tool is that it enables graphic designers, people who have like a vision, they think in images and metaphors, to create this kind of stuff without coding. Okay? Another cool example, it's something we put together to sort of advertise our open source font, one of the two of them, Source Sans Pro. And this is more about text flying in and out, and again, the resolution is killing me. This is just to give you a quick idea about Adobe Muse. Now, if you have questions, don't wait till the end of my session. Just raise your hand or interrupt me abruptly. Hey, Transylvanian guy, I have a question for you. Now, let's move on to Photoshop for the web. Anyone here uses Photoshop for web design projects? Anyone at all? Awesome. So do you love the slice tool? Is it something you think about like with love or mixed feelings? So Photoshop is a great tool, right, for designing and prototyping. Especially if you really know how to use the tool, you will be so much efficient, right, when using Photoshop. You can quickly experiment and move between different ideas. However, when you are using Photoshop for web design, well, at some point, you have to extract some of the assets from that composition, and you have to get those bits and pieces you need in the HTML project, right? And this is where you actually need to use the slice tool. And like in the real life, this process is like happening over and over again, right? You iterate with your client, the client has a better idea or a worse idea actually, and you have to go back to your composition, change, and slice again. And it's not fun, usually, especially when you have like big compositions. So we realized that, and we introduced last year a new feature available in Photoshop CC that it's called Generator. Anyone here used Generator? Okay, 1 or 2 people. So I think you are going to love this one. So how does it work? Generator basically enables you to automatically export layers or group of layers as PNGs or JPEGs, right? And how does it work? All you have to do is to edit the name of a layer or the name of a group of layers and add an extension, .jpeg or .png. And then you enable the feature and Photoshop will start exporting those layers, okay, for you. And the cool thing is that as long as you leave that feature enabled, as you, yeah?
How does it work with the layer effects?
It supports, I think, most of them. I've been trying. Yeah, and it works. So the cool thing is that as you start changing your composition, maybe you rotate the logo 50 degrees to the left or whatever, you apply a new effect, the tool automatically will re-export that layer or group of layers, okay? And guess what? The layers, you can choose where these PNGs or JPEGs will be saved. So you can use maybe like a shared network drive, right? And you can create maybe a better workflow between the web designer and the web developer because you continue push, right, the same assets to some common shared location. So let me quickly show you the feature in action. So this is my coffee shop composition. It's not complex enough to make you say, wow. So I have here something that is more likely. Like imagine cutting this out, right? It would be like painful, isn't it? Huh? What do you think? Fun or painful? Huh? Well, I guess if you are like cutting this in a coffee shop, it's fine. Here. So, let me see if I can, no, it's already too small, so I will try to bring this guy over here, and I'm going to show you. So for example, I have this logo.png, so this is going to be exported obviously as a logo.png, and it's the logo. And then I have a bunch of other things over here that are also named, right, with a PNG. So for example, I have like a PNG 16. What does it mean? It means that I want to export that layer as a PNG with 16 bits for the color, right? So you can have some control over the way that layer is exported. You can say, for example, for a layer, I want this layer to be exported as a 50 by 50 pixels thumbnail, and you can place a comma, and you can say, okay, I want the same layer also 200 by 200. And as a JPEG, right? A PNG for a thumbnail and a JPEG for a bigger size to have like a smooth image. So let's see where the folder is with these guys. So this is my PSD file, okay? And now I'm going to enable the feature. So I'm going to the File menu, press on the Generate, Image Assets. And you should see here a folder. Okay, this is the folder. And look at these beauties. Isn't that cool? It's cool. Okay, where is the logo? Where is the logo? Come on, here's the logo. Let's do a change to this guy. Come on, pick it up. Wow. It's magic. So it's available since last year. So let's move on. We don't have enough time to talk about Photoshop Generator. And another cool thing about Photoshop Generator, this time for web developers, front-end developers, the API of this feature, it's actually exposed to you guys. You can build an extension to Photoshop using JavaScript, and you can tap into this generator. It will be just a generator JavaScript object, and you can create extensions that do more, like automatically, I don't know, name layers, whatever, you know? So you have access actually to the generator object. Now, responsive design. I guess by now everyone knows what responsive design is, isn't it? Who knows what responsive design is? Okay, fair enough. But who knows what's the best workflow for prototyping and designing websites that are using responsive design? Anyone? So yeah, it's a tricky question, right? So I've been like watching sessions last year and 2 years ago about responsive design, and I got only one idea. So every speaker has his own way to solve this problem. Some people use Photoshop and they create a number of different Photoshop compositions for different screen sizes. Other people prefer to use like a text editor and they prototype and design in code, okay? And others are using something else, I don't know, pen and paper and so forth. So I think if you take a look at Edge Reflow, you might be happy. So we introduced this tool last year, and this tool has been designed from ground up as a designing and prototyping tool for the web. The tool itself, it's built on top of the Chrome browser, so it's actually a web app, right? All the logic of the tool, it's written in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And it means that what you're seeing here, this big canvas, it's actually a Chrome browser. So when you are adding a text, for example, an image, an SVG file, a black box with rounded corners, behind the scene, actually, you are going to get div elements, p elements, right? Image tags, SVG tags, objects, and so forth. And when you are going to use the property panel on the left side to style and position the elements, what you are actually going to do is using CSS properties. So I want this image to be, I don't know, 90% transparent. Or I want this div to be floated on the left, okay? What you are going to do is actually setting CSS properties, which means that as opposed to a tool like Photoshop, when you apply this to like a shadow effect, it will be exactly the same rendering engine that the end website is going to use, right? At least on a WebKit browser or Chrome browser, okay? It's not some fancy algorithm or whatever you have in a Photoshop tool. So it's pretty cool. Now, the tool also has like built-in support for responsive design. And the way we achieve that is by letting you to define those colored bars you can see at the top of the window. And you can define basically a breakpoint for a specific resolution. And then when you click on that colored bar, every property you are going to change, obviously, is going to be applied only for that breakpoint. And you can also start your prototyping or designing with a desktop-first approach, or the other way around. You can start with a small size, mobile first, and gradually start increasing, right, the size of the canvas and do the changes. So let me show you a project just to give you an idea. Anyone here knows about Reflow? Okay. So this is Reflow. I was playing around with the James Bond theme. I'm a big fan of James Bond lately. And I already placed here some elements, right? And as I told you, you have over here a way to decide the layout and to style the elements. And to add images, add background images, and so forth, gradients, and so forth. And the cool thing is about this slider. So right now, because of the screen resolution, what you are seeing, it's almost like a mobile, right? It's 650 pixels wide. If I decrease the zoom, I can go to a bigger resolution. So suppose you start with a desktop first approach, and you design this and it looks great, right? And then you can play with the slider and see where or what's the resolution where the design breaks. Because maybe it will look actually good on an iPad, right? So for 1000 pixels, it's still good, you don't have to do anything, right? But maybe when you are reaching like 900 pixels, it's clearly like broken, right? Doesn't look great. So what do? You add a breakpoint, and then you can do something like this, for example. You can grab these guys and you can say, okay, you know what, these guys should be maybe like I don't know, 48% width. And this guy should be maybe like 100%. And you can see they were pushed, right? I have to clear the margin on this one, so I get these two guys side by side, but you get the idea. So where is the margin? Here. I don't need a left margin, and boom, I have this guy, right? This layout. If I go back, it goes to this one. And of course, you keep doing this until you reach like the minimum resolution you are looking for. So you might get something like this. Okay, so this is like 460 pixels. The menu, it's a single item on a row, right? 760, 911, and then the rest of them, okay? You can also preview this thing in a browser. It works for Chrome and Safari. And you can also check for any element the CSS. So if you click on this guy, you get the CSS plus the media queries. But again, the tool is not meant to generate like code, HTML and CSS code for production. It's not production ready. It's more about giving you a way to quickly prototype and design and maybe sit with your client, right? And show him what's happening as you change the size of the browser. And quickly iterate through some ideas. Okay, maybe we can move this guy over here. Maybe we should actually hide this guy, right? We don't need this element for the mobile and so forth. So this is Edge Reflow. Okay, what about Photoshop? Because I told you some people are actually using Photoshop to design and prototype websites. Well, you can do that in Photoshop, and most likely you are going to create at least 3 different compositions to show your client, right? One for the tablet, one for the mobile phone, and one for the desktop. Or you can actually let Reflow to do the responsive stuff while you are spending your time in Photoshop to create only one composition, okay? So how does it work? It uses generator, basically, and in Photoshop, you have a way to say, okay, out of this Photoshop file, please create me a Reflow project, okay? And Photoshop goes and generates some HTML, some images, and put everything together into a Reflow project. And then you open the Reflow project, and you get something that looks pretty close to what you have in Photoshop. And then you start using the media queries to actually make it responsive. Does it make sense? A little bit. So let's see this in action. Back to the Photoshop. Let me cheat a little bit. I'm going to hide some of the layers in order to save some time. So generate Edge Reflow project. And again, in the same folder where my PSD file is saved, I should get this guy. And I should be able to open this guy, and I get this, okay? And after some more work, you get to a project that looks like this. Right, with media queries in it and everything. So again, you start in Photoshop, you create one composition, and you do the responsive design work in Reflow. Another cool feature between Photoshop and Reflow is the ability to somehow get like a round trip between your Photoshop file and the Reflow project. So what does it mean? It means that if I keep this file open in Photoshop, and then I enable this Photoshop sync, when I change something in my Photoshop file, again, applying a different effect, applying a different typeset, immediately that asset is re-exported to the Reflow project, and inside of the Reflow project, I get a notification, hey, one of the assets, or more than one asset, have been changed. Do you want to import it? Yes or no? Oh, this is cool. And another cool thing is the ability to add a new Photoshop composition to your existing Reflow project. So for example, here I have like the About page, okay? And I open this page over here, and if I go here in Reflow, I can say, okay, create a new page. And Reflow will take a look what's the current active document in Photoshop, and will suck that guy in. So this is the Photoshop to Reflow workflow. And you can see it here. Is that cool? Illustrator. Anyone here uses Illustrator for creating SVG files? Couple of you. So Illustrator almost always had this ability to save some illustration you created in Illustrator as an SVG file. But what it's new is that lately we improved greatly the SVG code generator. So if you create something today, the SVG code you get, it's very nice. It's condensed, it's easier to understand the code. And also, I don't know if you are aware of it, but there is a cool feature in Illustrator that allows you to actually create an SVG or a vector-based illustration out of a raster image, right? So you can bring in a picture, an image, a JPEG, a TIFF, a PSD, whatever, and you can trace it. You can let the illustrator to do the heavy work for you. And this is pretty cool. Now, why do you think SVG is important today for the web? Any idea? Why? Exactly. So SVG, because it's supported in all the modern browsers, it's one way to get around the problem of having multiple screens with multiple screen densities and resolutions, which typically means that if you are going to serve a JPEG image, you are going to have different JPEG resolution images for the same asset, right? With SVG, it's a vector-based image. You can scale it up and down, and you don't lose anything in terms of quality, right? So SVG is really cool today. So let's see if I can do a quick experiment. Earlier, I've been taking some pictures of you guys. So let's see. If I grab this part, okay, and go in Illustrator, okay, I can say image trace, and this is black and white, and immediately I got something, right? Maybe it's not the best, but the thing is you have different presets. So I can go like a high fidelity photo, I can go a low fidelity, 16 colors, and I can play around, okay? I can limit the number of colors. You have different settings. And you can get like really good results. Another cool feature of Illustrator, combined with some online services, is the ability to create a web font, an icon font, sorry. Do you know what an icon font is? Okay, so the way it works, you are going to create a bunch of SVG files in Illustrator. For each icon you want to export as part of an icon font, and then there is an online service. Actually, there are more services. One of them is icomatic.io. And you upload your SVG files, and you can also set some things, like you can define ligatures, which means that you can assign an icon to a specific sequence of characters, right? So I have here like the default font you can get from Icomatic, and this is the icon font, right? So I have an alert icon, I have an arrow down, arrow left, and so forth. But watch what's happening if I type in alert. Okay, I get this icon. This is happening because of the ligature. So when the font was created, the guy or the girl who created the font said, okay, whenever you apply this font to a div element or span element and you see this sequence of characters like alert, please replace with this glyph, okay? And of course, being a font, it means you can control it the same way you'd control any font, right? You have complete control over the size, you can change the color, and so forth. The only downside to icon fonts, it's the fact that you cannot have multiple colors, right? You cannot have an icon with 2 or 3 or 4 different colors. Maybe you can get with 2 colors if you play with other CSS properties, like maybe you apply a shadow color, right? A color as a shadow or a background, but otherwise it's one color. Dreamweaver. Anyone here used or uses Dreamweaver? Okay, one guy. So Dreamweaver, it's not dying. We are bringing Dreamweaver to 2014 and beyond. What's new in Dreamweaver? We added actually support for responsive design. We are using Modernizer under the hood, and you can actually create a new project that supports 2 or 3 different breakpoints. Also, we added a feature that looks a lot like the web inspector you have in Firefox or in Chrome, but it's now part of the tool itself. It's called CSS Designer, and basically it allows you in Dreamweaver to select in the design view any element from your web page, and on the right-hand side you are going to see all the selectors, or the CSS selectors that are applied to that element. And then you can choose one of those selectors, and you get, in this little guy over here, all the properties that are actually set for that selector, okay? And you can quickly filter them, like, okay, show me, for example, only the properties for the border for this selector that are actually set, right? You don't want all the 100 different border-related properties or attributes, CSS attributes. We also added support for web fonts. We have like a free web font library available at Adobe. It's called Edge Web Fonts. And this library, it's exposed. We have support for jQuery mobile and also for jQuery UI. But next, I want to show you something really cool. It's about brackets and edge code. Do you know what brackets or edge code is? A couple of you. So this is like, as opposed to Dreamweaver, which is a heavy web editor, edge code, it's a lightweight editor. It's built on top of the Chrome as well. So it is built with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And it has a number of cool features. So let me quickly show you this. Code. So I'm going to basically tell Edge Code that I want to visualize this HTML page in my Chrome browser. And right now, there is actually a live connection between the Chrome browser and my editor. So if I go, for example, on the H1 tag, I get immediately that tag highlighted in the HTML. And if I change something like, hello, I can immediately see what's happening. I can also dig very quickly and find the CSS that it's actually defining the look and feel of this H1 tag. So all I have to do is to go on the H1 tag and press Command D, and I get to see the CSS. And immediately I can change, for example, the color. Okay? You see the color has changed? So I'm editing a CSS rule that it's actually defined in some other place, in a CSS file that it's linked to my current HTML, but I'm editing in the current place. So I don't break the workflow, right? I don't have to hunt for that CSS file. I just press Command D. So this is pretty cool. And the next topic, it's about animation. Anyone here knows what Edge Animate is? Couple of you. So even today, you still have to build from time to time animations for the web, right? It might be a banner, it might be an animated hero image, it might be a piece of interactivity you need for your client. How do you design, how do you quickly prototype, how do you do something that you can actually show to your client? And I think most people try to do these things programmatically, so they lead with the code, but there is a problem. And the problem is related to the fact that most or the best interactive designers or motion designers don't think in code, right? They would rather use something visual with a timeline, with a stage, right? So this is what Edge Animate is. It basically gives you a canvas, a timeline, and the ability to animate div elements, images. So Edge Animate doesn't generate a canvas-based animation. It generates HTML code that is animated. And what can you get out of the Edge Animate? So let me quickly show you some animations. So this is an example, right? It's nothing like big or heavy, but it adds something to the page, to the character of this page, right? You see? I don't think it's cheesy, right? It's okay. It works with this design. So this is one example. Another example, which is much heavier, it's actually for the Rush movie. This is controlled by scrolling the page, and you get this sort of different piece of information, okay? And it was built using Edge Animate. So this is Edge Animate. Also, another cool feature of Edge Animate, it's the ability to actually export one animation as a package. So for example, I have this animation over here I created. I can export this instead of HTML as a small zip file, and then I can import that package into Dreamweaver or Adobe Muse, okay? So in Adobe Muse, for example, I added this guy on my About page somewhere around here, right? So this is my Edge Animate animation. So if I go back to my About page and I click to play, I get this. This has been created in Edge Animate. Nothing fancy. I told you I had only 2 hours to spend around for this project, copywriting, taking pictures. Oh my God, it's so much work to create a website. And my final slide, it's about testing mobile websites. How do you test on mobile devices, right? You get a bunch of mobile devices. You probably put your website or web app on a server, and then you go to that URL, which is most likely like 190.2 something, right? It's not that fun, isn't it? Well, we created a simple application that is called Edge Inspect that works quite simply. You install Edge Inspect on your mobile devices, iOS, Android devices. You install Edge Inspect on your desktop, and then you connect your mobile devices and your desktop to the same Wi-Fi network. And once you've done that, you basically get the coolest feature available in Edge Inspect, which is, I call it synchronized browsing, which means that when you open your Chrome browser and you enter a URL, all the connected mobile devices immediately will display the same URL. And as you interact with that URL, you go maybe to a different page or whatever, the mobile devices will always stay in sync and follow the lead of the Chrome browser, of the desktop browser. You also get the ability to take screenshots from all the mobile devices. So you press a button in your Chrome browser, there is an Inspect extension installed on your Chrome desktop browser, and all the connected devices will take a screenshot and send it immediately to your computer, okay? And finally, you get a remote inspector session with one of those mobile devices, which means you can check the CSS properties and you can get a JavaScript console. So this was my last bit. All the tools and the services I've been talking about are part of the Creative Cloud. We have a booth on the first floor. You are welcome to get there, and I can show you more in person. If you have questions, I will be here while I'm getting my stuff. And later on, my colleague, Michael Shez, will do a session in the room opposite to this one, and he will go in more details about some of the tools we have for web designers. Michael, are you here? Are you on strike today? So you are going to... He's French, so you never know. No strike today. No strike, okay. Thank you so much. If you have questions, on Twitter and Corlan.